Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Payments Leader Show. I'm your host, Adrian Evans, and I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome our guest, Sulabh. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Adrian. I'm doing very well. Pleased to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, I'm particularly interested today because we've been waiting to put this one in the diary for a while. But obviously, heading up global payments for Accenture, it really gives you that sort of global perspective across all markets. And fascinated to hear about different elements of the industry and of the ecosystem. Now, on the Payments Leader Show, we're about embracing opportunities before we see the threats, and we're going to get into those. But also, naturally, the component about what does the human element mean here? And actually, how do we combine, obviously, artificial intelligence and human intelligence to optimize? So, without further ado, I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about your background in the payments industry.
Sure. Adrian, I started my career in credit cards. I used to work with Capital One in the US in subprime market, in what is called marketing and analysis in Capital One M&A, but M&A has got different connotations. Yeah, I was doing product strategy, credit policy, marketing strategy there. I also then worked for the business dev team at Capital One, where I was looking at expanding Capital One into various markets in Asia. Um, After which I thought it was time to come to Europe, so I came to France to get my MBA, and then joined Accenture 22 years back
Oh, wow.
in the strategy practice. But payments has been a common thread through my stay. I mean, last 6, 7 years since 2019 or so, I've been leading the payments business globally at Accenture. Before that, I've done various roles, including analytics, risk, and finance in Accenture, but like have been like payments through and through. I mean, currently we work with large financial institutions, large market infrastructures, as well as all the other industries, whether it is retailers, whether it's telcos, whether it's the what we call resources, oil and gas, etc.,
Mm.
public services, to solve their payments problems and issues, right from strategy and advisory through to transformation, implementation, and operations.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So a broad remit in many ways, but obviously very specifically focused on our ecosystem. So I wonder if you could share with us why are you passionate about the payments industry?
Payments is one of those places where you feel, the change is the only constant, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
see,
indeed.
um, when financial services or any other industry is changing, like even you look at the agentic world, which we are emerging into, like with agentic commerce, we are right at the,
Yeah.
the cutting edge of things. If you look at tokenization as a theme, where lots of things are changing again, I mean, payments is one of those places where the change is right at the front end. I think it allows us to stay fresh,
Yeah.
um, stay relevant, because like we're the ones who are thinking about what could it mean for our clients, customers, society as a whole, and also learn constantly, which is phenomenal. The impact payments is having. I mean, payments is like oil, I would say. I know there used to be a term like data is the new oil,
Yeah.
but and oil currently in the geopolitics has got certain connotation. But I
Indeed.
would say generally, I think I mean, it's one of those things which you take as granted. And I
Mm.
always used to say, the more invisible they are, the better it is, because you don't know if there's a problem. But the world we are going into, it's quite visible as well, and
Mm.
money is changing shapes, and the wallet war, and the various other things. It feels like it's quite visible as well as invisible. There are lots of challenges, but still it's the one that keeps us going and keeps the economy and the societies function the way they are.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, you're absolutely right. It's refreshing. It's ever changing, and I suppose the amazing thing, as you just pointed out, there is for a transaction to occur, that there has to be a payment. from the simplest form to agentic to large, cross-border payments. There has to be a payment involved, doesn't it, for commerce to exist, almost by definition.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. No, I feel it is one of those things which is ubiquitous, as you say, but also really important, right? I mean, when the payment systems goes down, the front page of the newspaper, like almost immediately, right? Whether it is being able to buy bread and
Yeah,
milk, or whether it is to buy your new house, or
indeed.
be able to acquire a large company. I guess the transactions could be of various types and forms, but they are quite fundamental to how
Mm,
to how the society and the economy works and operates.
absolutely. Interesting you point there, the fact that actually the systems work best when they're invisible. But the truth is, I know we're both in the payments industry, but the truth is the payments industry has become far more higher profile and visible. Its visibility's increased. Well, if we could, what do you see as the largest opportunities in the payments industry, but also the biggest threats?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the market today and how it is evolving. And I think there's still some friction in certain payment types, especially cross-border and others, where there
Indeed.
is, like various initiatives and various countries, organizations coming together to solve for those friction points. Um, so I definitely believe like cross-border and solving for cross-border payments efficiently is a big area where there's significant opportunity. I think features functionalities in and around payments to
Mm,
enable payments in a seamless way, but also um, make payments effective either through credit, through insurance, through loyalty, through value-added services, through whatever means, is the other area where um, there is significant opportunity, and we've seen economies change posture um, in terms of the effectiveness, the GDP growth rate, and others because of the ease of payments and how they have changed their customer behavior as well as enabled from on the
mm,
larger end of the life cycle more liquidity and being able to make the cost of funds and others more efficient. So I think there's the front end, there's the core transactions themselves. I think data is a huge opportunity as well.
okay.
Um, and with data, I would say AI as well, but the core data is in itself. I mean, we've been sitting on so much payments transactional data, and it's very hard to access. It's distributed in the ecosystem, right from,
Mm,
I mean, if you look at the retail journey, the SKU level data um, to the data, the other data that the merchant has, to the data that the acquirer has, to the data that the network has, to the data that the issuer has,
mm,
and the overall demographical data, the customer, etc. Like I think they're just distributed, and then you put it in various silos again, not just in the value chain, but across the various departments and the core payments and the card payments and now the stable coin and other
mm.
payments and others. So data is a huge opportunity in my mind in terms of being able to use it. And then clearly alongside data is the new world of agentic, which is
Mm.
significant from an enterprise perspective, from an efficiency perspective, but as well as from a proposition perspective, right? And there's significant opportunity. I think I can keep going. Like, I mean, I haven't mentioned tokenization. I think
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
tokenization
Tell me
is
more. Yeah.
is a huge opportunity. What we're seeing in the US market with the USDC, USDT, and the whole stable coin change is
Mm,
significant, and we can discuss more. I mean, we're seeing countries adopting those currencies, and then there is in Europe we have got our own QValis and
indeed.
various G7 stablecoin initiatives, but then also the central bank digital currencies, not very far behind. And then more locally in the UK, we've got the tokenized deposits as the big wave. I mean, UK as well as the rest of the world, especially in the large financial institutions. So we're seeing significant wave of tokenization in money, and then there's a similar wave from the perspective of assets as well, whether it's securities, bonds, digit, for example, and others. And the opportunity in the whole tokenization space is big. Having said that, like the threats are equally strong. We all heard about Mythos, which came as a surprise, and all of a sudden, everyone is thinking about the possible vulnerabilities. But this is not just a one-off activity, right? You can patch maybe, but then we are talking about a world where there are so many of these LLMs, and we are talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of investments going in optimizing these, where over a period of time we would see, just from a security angle, like the whole the vulnerability being like a disease trying to attack, and you need to have a proper immune system to be able to tackle it and work work with it, where patching, the detection, the patching, anything will have to be real time, like the attacks, and we're going into a very different world. Other threats, as we go into more real time world, resilience is going to be the other big issue. We are seeing agentic is going to put huge pressure on the systems and the throughput and the scalability and whatever you call on most organizations. And yeah, it is while we said all the good things about payments being the oil or the air, air in the atmosphere, if it stops working, there's a big challenge. And I think we're going into a world where, the agents don't care if you are using an archaic system or not. I think batch will disappear over a period of time, and things will have to work at real-time speed. And imagine a world of multiple queries and multiple micropayments and multiple attack vectors. So you're talking about really, quite robust capabilities needed to be able to handle that. And then, of course, fraud and other threats continue in the same veins as we talk about quantum. I was looking at the quantum computers. I think this was the IBM one. Essentially, there's only 3 chips, size of probably the phone, in a supercomputer. But then the cylinder-like infrastructure on top of it is to actually cool the chips down. And it's only a matter of time when they are either in one of the PCs or in the phone, like these these types of capabilities, and already you can see that multiple organizations are starting to build towards that. So with combining AI or agentic AI and the agents and the expectations of the agents with the ability and the intelligence provided through agentic and Gen AI, and the processing speed of a quantum, we get into a very different world, which will require quite a lot of uplift in terms of capabilities from the industry perspective.
Okay. Perhaps we could go into, if we could choose an opportunity and a threat, and just sort of dive down further. You mentioned the huge opportunity that data is presented, and data is seen as oil, etc. And we've seen that. But perhaps you could give a specific example, say with stablecoin or tokenization. What could that mean, for instance, to an enterprise business or to a medium-sized organization over the next few years? What is the actual opportunity that can be monetized there?
Yeah. The two different topics, data and tokenization. But let me start with tokenization, then we can come to data, right? Given that you asked both. Um, so on tokenization, I mean, if you only have to hear Bill Winters or Larry Fink on the possible vision for tokenization. Like when you hear them, you can see like if all the money and all the assets were tokenized, we can live in a world which will be which will be far more um, efficient, fast, speedy world where transactions can happen quickly. There's no friction, costs will go down, efficiency will go up, yada yada yada. Um, for example, like buying, like we bought a second-hand car for my daughter, um, and we made the payment. Of course, it wasn't, it was a garage, so at least we knew the address where we were buying the car from. But the V5 certificate did not come in within a month. And
Right.
you would be worried, right? Like, I mean, I've made the payment, the car is with us,
Yes, indeed.
we've got the insurance, driving on the road, but has the ownership transferred, right? And with if the car was a ownership was a token and the money was token, it would have happened then and there, and we would
Yes,
be
indeed.
at ease, right? As an example, but like that's just a
Mm,
simple example. You can then say, well, that's just a simple exchange of token, but I can start to build programmability on top of it. And an
yeah, indeed.
example I give is I took my, say, all my examples are my kids' examples. I took my son for football the other day, and yeah, I mean, I just on some common WhatsApp group, someone was saying, well, I've got these two tickets if you would like for a certain amount. I didn't know the person, but I made the payment, trusting them. They honored it. They
Yep.
sent the ticket in good order, and things worked fine. But if you look at the possible
Yeah,
scenarios in
indeed.
this, there were quite a lot, right? I could have not paid. The guy would have sent me the tickets, but they could have been fraudulent
Okay.
tickets. Like all the various scenarios possible. I mean, programmability. If the ticket was tokenized, the money was tokenized, and we had a smart contract
Okay.
which had an if-then condition. You could build around that, and it could have been a lot better. And
Mm,
you can put similar, um, I mean, that's just programmability. Then you say collateralization, right? Actually, before collateralization, fractionalization of tokens, right? Where if I want to own 0.00001% of royalty of my famous music artist, I today cannot do it, right?
yeah.
It's a lie. But if I want to pay for it and I want to earn the royalty, whatever the guy gets, I mean, you can take it into buy to let property, you can take it into
Yeah, indeed.
whatever scenario around fractionalization. That's a huge opportunity. It could be a painting, it could be music, it could be an asset, whatever. Similarly, like collateralization, I mean, today, if you are a small business and you wanted a loan, and there were fewer organizations willing to lend you money because you don't have whatever, like, unlike a salaried person or a big corporation, you don't have the same kind of, you know, history where you can show the stability and ability to pay. How can you collateralize the assets you sit on? It could be the solar panels, it could be the shop, it could be the machinery, it could be the receivables. And if all these things were tokenized, you can collateralize
Wow.
it easily and get lending. Anyways, so that's I mean, the opportunity, and I can keep going on
Yeah, yeah,
tokenization is
indeed.
significant. I mean, data um, is again a huge topic, right? Like we sit in the payments industry, we sit on so much data, and more is going to get accumulated once. I mean, I say we have got the ISO rails in number of payment types, but the rails are flowing empty. because we haven't mandated a lot of fields. Plus, the possibility of these XML messages to carry photographs, to carry videos, to carry invoices, to carry so much is significant, but we are not using any of it, right? Like, so the potential to carry more data and accumulate more data is massive. But how do you actually then start to use the data? And I mean, this world of agentic and AI that we sit in, the um, the possibility of using the data is significant. I mean, you would have seen recently, I think Revolut came up with how they are starting to use
Mm.
the data using the transactional foundation models. I mean, that's just, or if you look at any, like you look at an acquirer, like you sit on multiple data points in the acquirer journey, like when you solicit a merchant, when you onboard a merchant, you do risk scoring, you've got risk models, you then authorize, authenticate, you do customer lifecycle management, and you've got multiple models, multiple data sets in various types. If you have interlinked models and you be able to use some of that, like core data to be able to, leverage end to end, you can make much better decisions, and then you can extend that to to enable the agents to operate and then create the agentic
Yep.
ecosystem, which is a whole topic in its own right. I know you're getting impatient to get to the next question. Do you want me to cover some threads
No,
as
no,
well,
not
or
at
do you...
all. Not at all. Sorry, I didn't. No, I was sorry.
I can I love when it comes to payments, I love to talk, and
No, not at
I
all.
can get
I'm
carried
sorry.
away.
I'm equally the same. I could listen to that all day about what the possibilities are within there. I think, if anything, the question I was dying to ask there was then, therefore, what's how do we close the delta between that potential world and where we are today? And sorry to double load a double question here, but what's the part of human inertia preventing that happening?
Yeah, it's just too many things to do, right? I mean, the money which is there with the organizations is limited. Um, there is, if you look at run the bank versus change the bank investment, that or how they spend the money in payments, run the bank is a significant part of how things happen just to maintain the
Mm.
complex ecosystem of
Indeed.
payment systems, and then you layer on top of it the regulatory investments or the mandatory investments, which leaves very little for all these things we are talking about, which go into the discretionary bucket. And I think that's the age-old problem, which I'm hoping that AI and agentic AI will probably help solve because of the efficiency in modernizing and being able to change
Mm.
the core, which is coming up through the possibility of technology and um, how it'll enable us. But we've got just so much to do, but so little resources to throw at it. And hopefully, the efficiency gain through agentic will be significant, which will kind of help alleviate some of the pain. Of course, there's a lot of hypothesis within that statement, which is the cost of code tokens will keep going down and down, um, and the whole agentic world is going to be cost effective. But I think, assuming that being true, we will see a world which is far more efficient, far more
Yeah.
productive, and what that will do is it'll start to release capital
Yeah.
to um, to do some of these very interesting propositional things. Now, there are certain markets where it has been driven centrally and forced via the mandatory change bucket of change. And like you look at Brazil, you look at India, you look at even some of the European markets and others where, um, like uh, there is an overlay service every quarter where you have to just just as a result of compliance create new capabilities, new functionalities and features.
Right.
So I
Okay.
think um, um, yeah, so it depends where the force, and each market is different. They have its own nuances, but we have to just see how. how that develops.
Wonderful, wonderful. Wow, you just opened almost the sweet shop of the payments industry about the possibilities. I wonder if we could we touched on funding there, or we touched on resources. Obviously, we hit a height probably back in 2023, in particularly Q4 2023 in terms of funding. Luckily, I was part of some of those large funding rounds and advising people on those. Things have become more scarce. I think investors have become very more focused, particularly on defensible revenue streams for the future, whether it's venture capitalists as well as P houses as well. But what are the successful fintechs and payment service providers? What are they doing to meet that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at fundamentally payments as a business, it's a high fixed cost, high capital intensive business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what that does um, um, is that, and I will probably say that things are changing, and maybe agentic will change the nature, the core nature of it, where it will variabilize it and create different opportunities. But as it stands today, it's still high fixed cost, high
Yeah, indeed.
capital. It requires significant year-on-year investment, and that comes with some key strategic choices as a business to work through, right? Whether it is scale, which allows you to, you know, leverage your scale to be then able to invest once and leverage it for wider variety of customers and markets and others. Um, um, or you create value such that you break down the relationship between transaction and price, which is where you can price for value.
Okay.
Because the more, if you're going cost plus, um, it's going to be very, very hard for you to
Indeed.
differentiate
Indeed.
and be able to, like really get to the core um, of differentiating in the market on a sustained basis. So if you're pricing for value and you can take out the correlation between number of transactions to what you get paid, it then allows you to then differentiate
Mm.
substantively and create value. So I think on these two dimensions, you can see lots of industry movement happening. We are
Mm.
clearly seeing lots of scale build happen. I mean, clearly, I mean, banking industry, you only have to look around, as well as payments. There's so much M&A activity happening,
Indeed.
where you're seeing scale being being built, and it's fascinating how like we go through the cycles of consolidation, but essentially current um, place where we are in the market is, I mean, scale is clearly going in that direction. But if you look at some of the fintechs and how they are differentiating, is
Mm.
that they are looking at the high margin places and playing deep in it,
Yeah.
where I mean, they're pricing for value in one sense. Um, you look at the acquirers, the Stripes, the Addians, the Mollys, the various sector checkouts of the world, and so the new age acquirers. They are kind of looking at how do they differentiate. I mean, Stripe in particular around the whole stable coin and the agentic world. They've gone big in that space. Um, you look at Wise, for example, who started in one space, which was the high, margin um, area of cross-border transactions. They've gone big, and now then creating new products for the customers, including
Yes,
like
indeed.
you can keep your money in money market funds rather than idle current account. If you're putting your money in wise in the various currencies around the world, of course, financial institutions are also trying to offer similar products. But all I'm saying is there are various dimensions where
Mm.
multiple organizations are going to break through this cycle and still create value.
Excellent, excellent. Returning to that piece actually of differentiation and I suppose that adding more of the sort of human side of this opportunity that's presented, what do you see as the link and the relationship and correlation between effective right leadership mindset to an effective operating culture leading to high performance, and obviously the reverse of that, which is a ineffective operating culture, ineffective leadership mindset, leading to poorer or definitely suboptimized
Yeah,
performance.
I think we have to only look around the industry that we sit in, where different organizations have taken different routes to showing that leadership, right? It could be product driven leadership, where um, they have created an organization really focused on creating the best product outcomes and and be at the front end of that product innovation
Mm,
and trying to drive the value.
yeah,
You have got, and that's how they have structured the whole organization front to back, like product driven organization with a product innovation mindset. And I mean, I would definitely put someone like Stripe in that bucket.
yeah,
Then you've got really passion for the customers and more customer driven organizations where you focus on the customer needs, the customer segments,
yeah.
and and um, and that organization kind of drives front to back the the value as in the customer organizations drive the product organization, the tech organization sitting behind it, and others and operations. And you've got multiple such organizations who are very customer driven, and you can say, for example, like Adyen, like even the JP Morgans of the world, etc.,
Yeah.
are very customer driven organizations. Um, of course, in this new world of whether it's tokenization, whether it's agentic, whether it's the threats we are talking about, the key is the speed at which the organization can move, uh, and you need leadership to have the right vision and goals
Mm,
set. But then also creating the right operating model and the capabilities within the organization to be able to move quickly. And yeah, it's a challenge because you these some of the organizations which are new, they can set the tone early on. They don't have the legacy mindset, the legacy
mm,
culture, and they can take the organization together. Um, Whereas there are other organizations who have lots of naysayers who say we have already always done it this way and it's harder. But I think the wake up call is there with agentic and with the way the market is changing, where we're seeing more and more organizations. Either, I mean, some of the like large banks, I mean, even Lloyd's Banking Group, they identify themselves as one of the large fintechs, for example,
yeah,
or a tech-like organization.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
you will
indeed.
see more and more of that happening, like I mean
Yeah.
BBVA and others, like where the the focus, the mission, the vision are more clear, but then also the drive right from top to bottom to actually change
Mm,
is there. But it's hard work, right? Because at the end of the day, it's people, and you have to win hearts and minds.
okay.
You as you go through the journey.
I mean, everybody talks about speed and the need for speed, but as you've just mentioned there as well, organizations it coexist with technology stack and also with people. I suppose I have a belief, or I've observed actually from the work I've done, that is when trust goes down, transaction costs go up, and our whole industry is built on that. So, what's the invitation here for leaders to try and enhance trust within their organizations to actually reduce human friction to get more done at speed?
Yeah, I mean, trust is core, right? Payments, you assume it'll happen and it happens, right? I'll come to the internal enterprise side, but I think this is where trust is a huge opportunity for financial services organizations to take a lead and get back into the game where they were losing some, say, customer interaction in the market. And there are various initiatives like digital identity, like various other means and mechanisms where, given the trust that they have, they can create that. And the same is true internally, where I mean,
Mm,
trust comes from consistency. From I mean, one is clarity and
yep.
consistency, right? So if you have clarity on which direction you're going
Mm,
in, and if you have consistency of follow through, and you're providing the right capability to make those changes happen. I mean, that's a good three C's actually. Um, then you can see that um, the organization will slowly start to move behind it. I mean, any organization, like we all know the change cycle, right? There is the chasm of adoption. You always have the early adopters, and to pass through the chasm, you need the right role models, which the early adopters will give. But clarity in terms of the direction of travel along with the role models. And then the only way the chasm will get passed is if you have consistency and the capability in the organization to then be able to
mm,
overcome the
mhm.
barriers, and then the rest is history. So like, and we've seen this change happen in our organization multiple times, right? I mean, real-time payments is a class case in time example. Adoption of wallets is a case in time example. Like we've gone through so many changes ISO, and some of it has been regulatory, some of it has been um, done by the industry because of the competitive forces. But I think those organizations that can bring together the whole organization, meaning all the people and the talent they have, are the
Mm,
ones that are leading.
excellent, excellent. So, just talking about the internal enterprise there, would that be your invitation to leaders? The quite a neat three C's model there of providing clarity and a vision, yet at the same time then showing tying that ultimately with capability and pulling those elements together then to build internal trust to actually then go to market with a trusted proposition and a trusted promise for customers.
Yeah, and consistency of follow through, right? You say one
Yeah,
thing one thing today and another thing tomorrow, and you lose the team. Yeah, I mean, I would say, um, and then yeah, help build the capability, because I mean, if people can see, touch, feel that it is within their grasp of
indeed.
making the change happen. I mean, they can see in terms of the vision. They can feel by looking at some of the colleagues that yeah, they can do it. I mean, it's the same with AI, right? Um, and how do you actually? I mean, when the whole industry, I mean, the banking industry moved to digital, right? Or part of moving to digital was all about a big change, and it's the same. We have to take that step, and same with agentic, right? Like you have to have some really good role models. You have to be consistent, saying this is
Indeed.
important, and show and track and follow through, as well as create the right environment and
Mm,
capability. So I would say, and that creates the new culture, right? Maybe that's the
yeah.
overarching C um, for the organization.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I think we could definitely go down this one a long, long way. And I think it's fascinating how as sort of trust binds all of those C's together. That
That's
is
right.
the deliverable internally and external. So we've looked at possibilities today. We've looked at potentially limited resources because of various regulatory pieces, as well as just constraints of maintenance of just maintaining in a fixed high, very high fixed cost space. So naturally, we want economies of scale. That's the thing that's going to drive this whole industry forward. But I deliberately posed this question to you, which is, where do you believe the global payment industry will be in December 2028? Where do you believe we're heading there? If there were just three headlines you could give me on that, that would be appreciated.
So 2.5 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So what if I had a crystal ball, where would I see definite progress? I would see definite movement in terms of um, data and AI and agentic AI happening in the industry, because I think um, that will come out from various places. I mean, in AI, some of the payment scale ups have made some big announcements around adoption of AI, and as a result, also looking at the impact of that. And I don't think the rest of the industry can stay put and be able to compete. So we would see an
Mm.
agentic and AI will drive the data activity. So I think that's one area where I would see um, significant movement and adoption. And obviously that just goes with one caveat, that the cost of tokens will scale through
Yeah,
scale
indeed.
start to come down significantly. Um, I would I would expect constant movement when it comes to new product propositions for the customers. I mean, what we have seen in certain markets, and again, I would say in Brazil with Pix, with UPI, in India with various others, both on the consumer side as well as I think some of that is also moving to creating new capabilities on the SMB and corporates as well. Um, I would see an adoption of those capabilities or those features, functionalities happen across the
Mm.
various markets as well. While AI, everyone will be um, trying to figure out what's the art of the possible. Here it'll be the catch up and level, um, coming to the same level as some of the product features are, whether it happens through competitive forces or it happens through the regulatory and forces needs to be seen. But I would expect that to happen. I would expect to live in an environment by then where I think risk, security, fraud risk, as well as resilience risk is going to be high on everyone's radar, and
Mm.
lots of investments will be going in still to complete the modernization journeys a number of
Mm.
more traditional players have had. And I think we will be in a world where um, incidents um, um, or the risk of incidents will be a lot higher, and people will be accelerating whoever has not completed the modernization journeys, because the possibility of issues when it comes to whether it's security, ransomware, or resilience risk is just not acceptable for the industry. So if you
Okay.
say those will be the three areas where I would, if I'm allowed a fourth, then I would say tokenization will be catching up. Maybe on the money side, we will see an additional payment instrument in all of our wallets, as well as
Mhm.
there will be, whether it's, and it'll vary by market as to what that instrument is. And likewise, on the wholesale side, we will see movement faster, both on the money side and the asset side, but we'll see. Anyways, I think that those will be my three, four um, areas. I would say by 2028 we would have changed significantly.
Thank you for your for being bold and courageous and putting that out there. I do appreciate it. This is normally the time where I just try and pull together our conversation for the audience for the most salient points. Would you be? But I've got many notes here. So would that be okay if I just shared that with you?
Please.
So we started the conversation very much about the passion you have for the industry, and I think my takeaway from that was the level of impact the payments industry has. It touches all of our lives, and therefore the impact it can have, particularly on a global basis. And I think you obviously being immersed in that, you've seen the difference there and seen the impact. I think quickly then, obviously, you'd worked for a very data-led business when you started your career, and you'd seen data now described as the oil of the economy. I know it has certain connotations, but also payments being the effective oil for the economy, both positively and potentially negatively when we can see blockages there. I think the important thing for me that really struck was, I suppose, the sheer level of passion came through with the almost the volume and vastness of the opportunity to present it across the industry, from stablecoin to tokenization to cross-border payments and reduce friction. And and I think what's fascinating as well that came from there is just the different rate of adoption that's allowing different things to happen in different countries. You mentioned India as a good example, mandated on a quarterly basis. You must have you must have driven this level of innovation and new product to stands. It always reminds me a little bit of Formula One team. I always remember speaking to a team principal many years ago, and I said to him, what would happen if you just did no improvement even during the season? You're number one at the moment. He said, we would be last on the grid. Yeah. And I think that's a really good analogy there as well. But also the very real threats that particularly AI as an enabler and lever for growth, but also potentially LLMs talking to each other. And I should say that they have no conscience. It's that level of care isn't there. But then I thought it was fascinating how we said about how can you reduce the delta between all of these wonderful possibilities for everybody and reduce friction. And it's interesting how you just remind everybody that we do live in a very high fixed cost industry. And the more and more that can be moved to variable cost, the more possibilities can happen, the more true agility can happen. But you add on top of maintenance, you add on top of that regulation, there's a very limited budget ultimately for innovation to drive forward. However, change is inevitable. Um, I was particularly fascinated with when you talked about culture and the link between leadership mindsets, effective operating culture, and then those driving high performance. I think we came up with, or you came up with four C's as being fundamental. The whole industry is built on trust, yet the thing that allows that trust to be manifested internally as well as externally facing is clarity and vision from the top. You need a vision where people are going to get behind you. You need to be consistent with your behavior and follow through. And what you do tomorrow is going to be broadly consistent with your behavior today. That builds trust over a period of time. But as you're doing so there, you have to build capability, both human capability as well as technological capability across the stack, which then leads to an effective culture to be able to move forward and make the difference. I really appreciated your boldness with saying where you think the industry will be in 2028. I think there's sort of you alluded to some naturally the agentic commerce and the use of data. It currently feels very locked away and fragmenting in segments. What can happen to that data, and how can that be, I suppose, brought to competitive advantage for various people? Naturally, tokenization is going to be a part of that, but the threats posed by major challenges to the system. But I was just left feeling that the thread through all of this was the caliber of people, including yourself, that we have in the industry, seeing the possibilities, but balancing act across the threats, the regulation, the different opportunities, but definitely a very human desire to reduce friction, reduce cost, and actually, the lovely example you gave with your daughter. And again, I put something similar where we bought a car recently. I suppose the possibility for me here about marrying up financial services in the service of the economy. So financial services, the payment went through well, but actually now I haven't just got the product. I safely secure that I know I've got ownership and provenance of that. That's scaled across the industry. So they were my most salient takeaways from our conversation.
Sounds good. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, Adrian.
Can I leave the final words with yourself if you were to give us one final thought?
I mean, we are in a very exciting industry at a very exciting time, and we just have to be very eyes wide open in terms of moving with it. Of course, there's a lot of noise in the system. There's also a lot of um, possibilities, but then the same answer is not applicable to every organization. Figure out what you want to do and then have conviction and follow it through.
Well, thank you. I found today just a real inspiration just because of the scope and your passion for the industry. And thank you very much indeed for sharing your wisdom and your time with us.
Thank you.